The story unknown to many Africans. Once I read about the Arabian slavery. It will surprise you to know that the Arabs were among the last nations to stop slavery of the black people. Our forefathers were treated so harshly that between 869 and 883 AC, there was what history described as the Zanj Rebellion. One of the bloodiest and the most destructive rebellions which the history of the Arab nations record. The Zanj, as history described them, were the Bantu-speaking people captured in Africa and transported to the Middle East. The uprising saw tens of thousands of our forefathers dead until they were conquered again in 883 AC, which brought an end to the uprising. A rough estimate by the historian scholars showed that the number of slaves held by the Muslim world for 12 centuries, my brothers and sisters, that was 1,200 years, were between 11.5 to 14 million slaves. Listen to this. The Quran compilation was already completed between 644 to 656 AC, while the Bible was already existing as far back as 200. So these two books you call your holy books in Africa today were already existing before they began the slavery of your forefathers. Yet their Bible and their Quran did not tell them then that your forefathers were same Adam and Eve offsprings. My brothers and sisters in Africa, most of us are aware that the Western nations took our forefathers as slaves and their aim was to use them as objects of work in form of tools to build their bridges, mansions, and many others. But permit me to tell you today that the Arabians' aim for slavery of our forefathers were beyond that. The Arabs also turned our forefathers into war soldiers, sacrificing their lives in their quest to capture more land and invade more communities. Our forefathers were mostly used for irrigation, mining, and animal husbandry. But the most common uses were as soldiers, guards, and domestic workers. Many of the Arab warriors rely on slave soldiers and sometimes promote them to a position known as emirs. So if you're an African from a country like Nigeria, where you hear about the emirs, your history is the most important information you can have before you lose your identity and your land completely. So if you don't know before, let me tell you that your forefathers were given only two options: to become a Muslim or to die as a sacrifice of war and as a slave. You don't know your story, children of Africa, and for that, I cry for Africa. These stories are available online just like the Bible and the Quran that you carry, but you don't ever read them. Your leaders don't tell you either. Instead, you still read the same books of the same people who enslaved your forefathers for 12 centuries. Today, an African child born into a Muslim family must first learn how to speak Arabic before he or she can worship his creator. Imagine what you have done to yourselves, Africa. Indeed, our forefathers must be rolling in their graves, saying that their own great-grandchildren, saying that he and she is a descendant of Adam and Eve. How did you become a descendant of an Arab or a Jewish man who took you as slaves for 12 centuries? Have you ever asked yourself if Adam and Eve sound like an African name to you? Of course, the Arabs and the Jewish people can never explain and will never be able to tell you the names of the first black man and the first black woman ever created by God. But instead of them to shut up, their motives to continue to have religious colonies will not let them. They tell you that you are from Adam and Eve. How can that be Africans? The generations of blacks taken from our continent to all other continents in the world are still blacks till this very moment. Why haven't they turned into whites and Arabs and Jewish and Indians and Chinese and Koreans? But no, they are still blacks even till tomorrow. How come the whites in South Africa, for example, who migrated from Europe over 400 years ago, are still white even till tomorrow? Their skin, their eyes, their hair, everything about them never turned to that of a black person. The Arabs invaded Africa and took our forefathers as slaves, and then tell you that you are the offsprings of their first created Arab or Jewish Adam and Eve. And you believe them without questioning. My dear brothers and sisters in Africa, you see, the coronavirus pandemic that we are all going through at this very moment has in no doubt caused tremendous amount of damage. But at the same time, it has been a great eye-opener and a mind-blower for those whose minds are not completely blocked and for those whose eyes are not yet blind. By the end of this pandemic, it will now be surprising that the solution to this deadly virus will be produced by our medical practitioners. The solution to the problem of climate change in the world will in no doubt be found by the collective effort of every sector involved in finding the solution to that problem. One thing our world has equally learned from this pandemic is that there is not enough food in the world to go around, and the solution to that as well shall be found by our farmers and those in the farming sector. As our world continues to exist, so shall human beings continue to face different kinds of troubles, and the solution to all these problems shall always be found by those involved in those sectors. So I ask you, brothers and sisters of Africa, what solution has the religions you fight each other over provided for you? At least in our lifetime, we are now faced with a real problem. Not problem that you watch by religious actors shown to you on your TV screens. So I ask you again, Africans, why haven't these religions you love so much saved you now? When a child is born, the only thing we all bring from God, our Creator, is love. Why don't you then choose love as your religion, Africa? Because the only true way to God is your own personal relationship with Him. God does not live in those buildings. God does not spend money. God does not drive beautiful cars and private jets. Neither is he captured by any religion, or as he a religion, as there are no signs or even the smallest evidence for that. But if there is anything that speaks to us all, regardless of our colors, our religion, our race, it is our hearts. For indeed, that is a place where you feel the presence of God. Love yourselves, Africans. Love your skin. Love your nations. Love your continent. Love Africa and be proud to be Africans. Love your continent so much that you do not ever give it up again for any religious or economic sentiment. Love your continent with all your heart and tell your stories to your generations unborn, so that your generations do not continue to be slaves. I am your concerned brother. God bless you all.